Emma Hayes's tiny boots sank into the snow with each step, the weight of the dented tin box in her hands far heavier than the scraps it carried. Her long brown hair was matted, strands sticking to her wet cheeks where the cold had turned her tears into crystals. The ragged red sweater she wore did little against the freezing wind that bit through every seam. She trudged forward anyway, whispering as if the wind could carry her words upward. "This is for you, Mama. I brought dinner." She paused, setting the tin carefully on the frosted bench of the abandoned train stop. Inside was all she could gather: a crust of bread, half an apple browned by frost, and a biscuit someone had thrown away. She arranged them carefully, as though setting a table. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady with a kind of innocence only children possess. Around her, the night stormed. Snow swirled like ghosts, covering the tracks, muting the world into silence, broken only by the wind's cry. The girl hugged her doll close to her chest with one arm and touched the tin box with the other, her breath fogging as she whispered again. "I know you're in heaven, Mama, but maybe you'll smell it and come." From the far end of the platform came the sound of boots crunching through ice, not hurried, not harsh, steady, purposeful. A tall figure emerged from the storm, shoulders broad beneath a camouflage uniform, beard frosted white at the edges. Beside him padded a German shepherd, ears flicking, nose working the air. The bond between man and dog was visible even before they spoke, each movement mirrored, each pause shared. The man slowed when he saw the child. His name was Noah Ramirez, a soldier who had seen too many winters that never seemed to end. The dog Shadow stopped too, his dark eyes fixing on the little girl as if he already understood. Noah's breath caught. Children weren't supposed to be alone in storms like this. He knew loss, but this was something else. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching a few feet away so as not to startle her. His voice was rough from cold and memory, but gentle. "What are you doing out here?" Emma lifted her face, red from the wind, eyes swimming. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pointed to the tin on the bench. Shadow padded closer, lowering his head near her small knees, sniffing the air before settling carefully on the snow. Emma's hand, trembling but brave, reached out and rested on his fur. The warmth of the dog bled into her fingers, and her shoulders eased for the first time all night. Noah watched, moved in ways he didn't expect. He had seen Shadow comfort men in war, but this was different. Before speaking again, he sat down on the cold bench across from her, removing his gloves to show empty, gentle hands. His fingers found the brass locket hanging under his jacket, a keepsake he never went without. He rolled it between his thumb and forefinger, the way he always did when ghosts pressed too close. Emma tilted her head, curious. "What's in there?" she asked softly. "A picture," Noah said, his eyes shadowed. "Someone I loved, someone I miss." She nodded as if she understood completely. Then she whispered, "Me too." Her small hand slid the tin closer so he could see. Bread, apple, biscuit, arranged with the care of a banquet. "It's dinner," she explained with trembling lips. "For my mum in heaven. I bring her food so she won't be hungry." The words struck Noah harder than the cold ever could. He looked at Shadow, and even the dog seemed to bow his head, as if recognizing something sacred. Snow rattled the station's glass. The wind howled through the broken cracks in the roof. For a moment, time stopped. A soldier haunted by promises he couldn't keep, a dog that lived to guard, and a child whose faith built miracles from crumbs. Noah's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, but his throat closed. It was then the girl leaned closer, her doll slipping from her grasp into the snow, and whispered words that carved themselves into the night. "I brought dinner for my mum in heaven." Noah froze, locket burning against his skin. Shadow whimpered low. The storm roared louder, but inside the station there was only the sound of a child's faith, and two broken warriors who could do nothing to stop the tears welling in their eyes. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. And with Emma's whisper still hanging in the frozen air, the night waited for what would come next. The storm outside grew heavier, each gust rattling the station windows as though testing the fragile glass. Snow piled against the door, sealing them deeper into the forgotten place. Noah Ramirez stayed crouched across from Emma Hayes, his camouflage uniform dusted white with frost. Shadow, the German shepherd, sat poised between them, his eyes flicking from girl to soldier, as if silently urging Noah to speak. Emma hugged her doll to her chest again, brushing off the snow clinging to its frayed hair. Her small hands trembled, though whether from cold or the weight of her words, Noah couldn't tell. He watched the little tin box sitting on the bench, its contents meager but sacred. A battlefield offering, he thought, not of war, but of love. "Where's your father?" Noah finally asked, his voice low, careful. Emma's eyes dimmed. He left a long time ago. Mama said he couldn't stay." She hesitated, then added, "And then Mama got sick. I thought if I brought her food, she wouldn't be hungry anymore." The words stabbed at Noah. He pulled the brass locket from his pocket, thumb tracing the edge. Inside was a photo of his wife and son, faces now faded by time. His wife had passed while he was deployed. His son taken too soon in an accident, promises unkept, love buried under years of silence. He swallowed hard. "I used to bring food too, for someone I loved. It helped me feel close." Emma studied him, her tear-reddened eyes wide, as though measuring the truth in his face. She gave a small nod, then whispered, "Then you understand." Shadow nudged Noah's leg, sensing the grief in his voice. The dog leaned gently into Emma as well, resting his head on her lap. She smiled faintly, fingers sinking into the thick fur. The station door suddenly banged in the wind, jolting all three. Emma clutched the doll tighter. Noah rose instantly, scanning the broken platform outside through the frosted glass. Shadow followed his movement, tail stiff, body ready. Through the curtain of snow, a shape stumbled near the tracks, a figure half collapsed, dragging something in his hand. At first, Noah thought it was another traveler. Then he caught the glint of metal, an iron bar. "Stay here," Noah ordered softly. Shadow pressed against Emma's legs, a shield of fur and muscle. The figure staggered closer, face gaunt, clothes torn, eyes wild with hunger. He pounded weakly against the station door, voice hoarse. "Food! Please, food!" Emma flinched, eyes darting to her tin. "He's hungry too," she whispered. Noah tightened his grip on the locket, jaw clenched. He'd seen eyes like that before, in war zones, on men who had lost everything. Desperation made dangerous company. The starving man rattled the door harder. "Let me in! I'll take it!" Shadow growled, a low warning rumble filling the room. Noah positioned himself between the door and Emma. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, though his heart hammered. He had to decide, shut the world out to protect this fragile child, or open it and risk everything. Emma's voice broke the silence, small but steady. "If Mama's in heaven, maybe I should give him her dinner." Noah froze. The innocence in her words shattered something inside him. His throat tightened, and Shadow pressed closer, sensing his hesitation. Outside, the starving man slammed the door again. The metal bar scraped against the glass. The storm howled louder. The danger was no longer just the cold. The starving man's blows against the door echoed like gunfire in the hollow station. Each slam rattled Emma Hayes to her bones. She shrank back against the bench, clutching her doll so tight the seams creaked. Noah Ramirez stepped forward, one hand on the doorframe, the other resting on the brass locket beneath his uniform. Shadow pressed low against the ground, muscles tense, lips peeled back just enough to show teeth. The German shepherd's growl vibrated through the floorboards, steady and deep. "Easy, boy," Noah muttered, though his own heart was racing. He turned his head toward the child. "Emma, stay behind Shadow. Don't move unless I tell you." Emma nodded, her wide eyes darting from the door to the tin box that still sat on the bench, the scraps of bread, the half-apple, the biscuit, all she had saved for her mother in heaven. She glanced back at Noah, then whispered, "He's hungry, like Mama was." The words carved into Noah's chest. He had seen hunger hollow men into shells, watched desperation strip away kindness until only instinct remained. And yet, coming from her, it sounded like a prayer for mercy. The next slam cracked the wood. A jagged piece of the door splintered inward. The starving man shoved his arm through the gap, swinging the iron bar wildly. His voice rasped like broken glass. "Food! Give me food!" Shadow lunged forward, clamping his jaws around the intruder's sleeve, stopping the swing mid-air. The man howled, stumbling back into the snow, but Shadow held firm, growl rising into a snarl. Noah shoved the door open and surged forward, his soldier's reflexes flaring. In one swift motion, he twisted the bar from the man's grip and shoved him against the wall of the station, pinning him hard enough to rattle the old wood. The man's face, gaunt and hollow, contorted with fear and rage. "Stop!" Emma cried, her voice cracking. She stood on the bench, tiny arms spread as if to shield them all. "Don't hurt him!" The storm roared around them, snow swirling through the open doorway. Noah tightened his grip, pressing the man's shoulders into the wall, the smell of sweat and frostbitten skin, mixed with blood from a split lip. "Look at me," Noah commanded, voice sharp. The man's wild eyes darted to him. "You come near the girl again, you'll regret it. Do you understand?" The man trembled, chest heaving. His voice broke on a sob. "Please, I just wanted to eat." Emma slid off the bench, the tin clutched in her small hands. She shuffled toward them, boots slipping on the ice. Shadow blocked her with his body, but she pressed against his fur, peeking past him. "It's Mama's dinner," she whispered, holding out the tin. "But maybe she can share." Noah froze. The girl stood there in her ragged red sweater, hair wild with snow, offering the only food she had with a purity that silenced the storm itself. His grip on the starving man loosened. Slowly, cautiously, he let him slide down to the snow. The man took the tin with trembling hands, tears mixing with ice on his cheeks. He devoured the bread in seconds, gnawed the apple core until nothing was left, chewed the stale biscuit as though it were a feast. Emma watched quietly, her doll dangling at her side. Noah stepped back, Shadow at his heel, his chest heavy. He looked at the child, this little girl who had turned scraps into salvation, who had reminded him of a truth he had long buried. He knelt in the snow beside her, one hand resting on her thin shoulder. "You didn't just feed him, Emma," he whispered. "You reminded him he's still human." Her small brow furrowed, unsure what he meant. She only shrugged, hugging her doll again. Mama would have done it. Shadow leaned against them both, his warm fur pressing into Emma's knees, his steady presence anchoring the fragile peace. Noah closed his eyes. For the first time in years, something cracked open in his chest, not just grief, but the faint, flickering light of hope. But outside, beyond the storm, more footsteps crunched on the snow. He opened his eyes sharply. Shadow's ears pricked. The night was not finished with them yet. The station had gone silent, except for the wind. The starving man now slumped in the corner, clutching the empty tin to his chest as though it were gold. His breathing slowed, no longer wild, just exhausted. Emma Hayes sat on the bench again, hugging her doll tightly. Her sweater was wet at the sleeves, snowflakes caught in the strands of her tangled brown hair. Shadow pressed close to her, his head resting on her lap, eyes still trained on the doorway. Noah Ramirez paced the floor, boots crunching on the frost that had crept inside. His hand kept brushing against the brass locket hidden beneath his uniform. The image inside, his wife and son, haunted him, as vivid as if the photograph burned against his skin. Emma's act of giving away her heaven dinner had struck something deep, too deep to ignore. He caught himself staring at her, and in her face he saw flickers of his son at that age, the same small hands, the same quiet strength. The ache nearly doubled him over. "Why are you crying?" Emma asked softly. Noah stiffened, hand dropping from the locket. He hadn't realized the tears had slipped past his guard. He turned his face away, but the question lingered like a blade. "Because I remember promises I didn't keep," he said finally, voice low. Emma tilted her head, confusion and innocence mingling. "Did you promise to bring dinner too?" The simplicity of it made him choke on air. He looked at her again, this little girl who gave her only food away and still believed heaven had ears. Before he could answer, Shadow shot upright, ears sharp, body rigid. A growl rose deep from his chest. Noah spun toward the door. Through the snow-streaked window, figures moved, 3, maybe 4. Their outlines hunched against the wind, but their stride was purposeful, too steady to be lost travelers. "Stay here," Noah ordered. His hand brushed Emma's shoulder, anchoring her to the bench. She clutched her doll, eyes wide. The footsteps grew louder, boots crunched on ice, then stopped just outside the broken doorframe. "Supplies!" a rough voice barked from the storm. "We know someone's in there. Hand it over and nobody gets hurt." The starving man whimpered, pressing the tin tighter to his chest. Emma flinched. Shadow braced himself between her and the door, a wall of fur and muscle. Noah's pulse hammered. His body shifted automatically. Soldier again, though every instinct screamed this wasn't war, it was worse. These were scavengers, feeding on weakness. And there was a child in the room. The first intruder pushed inside, snow spilling with him. A jagged scar cut across his cheek, and in his hand he held a crude bat wrapped in wire. Behind him came 2 more, one clutching a knife, the other with nothing but clenched fists and hunger-bright eyes. Emma gasped. Her doll slipped from her arms, falling onto the snow-dusted floor with a soft thud. Noah froze at the sight. Not of the intruders, but of the doll lying in the snow. His mind jolted back years to a different floor, a different child, his son's stuffed bear lying abandoned on a pillow the morning he left for deployment. He had promised he would be back. He hadn't been. The bear had waited forever. His breath hitched, the memory nearly drowned him. But then he saw Emma's trembling hands, reaching for her fallen doll, her eyes desperate not to lose it the way she'd lost everything else, and something shifted inside him. He stepped forward, blocking the intruders, voice iron despite the crack in his heart. "You're not touching her," he growled. Shadow's growl answered, low and deadly. The scarred man sneered, bat raised. "Then you'll bleed first." The storm outside wailed, pressing harder against the walls, as though the night itself held its breath. The scarred man stepped fully into the station, bat scraping against the frozen floor. Behind him, the knife-wielder grinned with broken teeth, and the third intruder cracked his knuckles like a drumbeat of menace. Snow whipped through the doorway, swirling around their boots. Emma Hayes pressed herself into the bench, tiny arms wrapping around her knees. Her doll lay just beyond reach, face down in the snow dust. Shadow crouched in front of her, body rigid, growl deepening into a rumble that vibrated in the hollow room. Noah Ramirez planted himself between the girl and the men, shoulders squared, locket hot against his chest. His voice came steady, honed by years of command. "You'll leave now. There's nothing here worth dying for." The scarred man sneered, swinging the bat lazily. "We're already dying, soldier. Cold, hunger, storm. Only question is, who starves first?" His eyes darted past Noah to Emma, and his grin widened. "The little one won't last a night. We'll take what she's hiding." Emma gasped, clutching her knees tighter. Noah's jaw tightened. He took one step forward, blocking their line of sight. "You're not taking her! You want to fight? You've found one!" The knife-wielder lunged first, blade flashing in the dim light. Shadow exploded forward, slamming into the man's arm. The knife clattered to the ground as the dog's teeth sank into the attacker's sleeve, dragging him down with raw power. The third intruder charged, fists raised. Noah intercepted him with a soldier's precision, arm up to block the swing, knee driving into the man's stomach. The looter doubled over, breath stolen, collapsing onto the icy floor. The scarred man roared, raising his bat. He swung with all his fury, the wire tearing through air. Noah caught the blow on his forearm, pain burning like fire, but he held steady. With his other hand, he ripped the bat free and slammed it into the ground, splintering wood. "Walk away!" Noah growled through clenched teeth. The scarred man staggered back, eyes flashing with rage. He looked past Noah to Emma again, desperate for leverage. And then he froze, because Emma, shaking, had crawled forward to snatch her doll from the snow. She held it tight to her chest, whispering through her tears, "Mama, please don't let them take me." The words weren't meant for him, or Noah, or anyone in the room, but they fell heavy, holy, silencing even the storm for a heartbeat. Noah's breath caught. Shadow released the pinned looter and returned to Emma's side, body curling protectively around her small frame. The scarred man's fury faltered under the weight of that whisper. His bat hand trembled. For the first time, he looked less like a predator and more like a man caught staring into his own sins. Noah stepped closer, voice like thunder. "You heard her. Leave." The intruders hesitated, breath steaming in the freezing air. Their bravado cracked, hunger and exhaustion bleeding through. One by one, they stumbled backward into the storm, curses fading into the howl of wind. The station was left in silence again, broken only by Emma's soft sobs and Shadow's steady breathing. Noah lowered himself to the floor beside her, his battered arm throbbing. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "You're safe," he whispered, though his own voice shook. "I won't let anyone take you." Emma nodded, doll clutched so tight it looked ready to burst. She looked up at him through tear-glossed eyes. "You kept the promise." The words shattered Noah. His throat closed, his eyes burned, and for the first time in years, tears carved tracks down his face. Shadow pressed his head into Noah's leg as if to hold him together. In the middle of the storm, in a crumbling station, something had shifted, not just survival but salvation. The night stretched on, storm battering the station like a living beast. Snow forced its way through every crack, piling in corners, dusting Emma Hayes's tangled hair as she huddled against the bench. Shadow curled beside her, his thick coat shielding her small frame from the drafts. Noah Ramirez stood near the fractured door, bat still in hand, chest heaving from the fight. The intruders were gone, but their echo remained. Emma's whisper, "Mama, please don't let them take me," still rang in his ears, powerful enough to drive off men, hardened by desperation. Noah flexed his bruised arm where the bat had struck. Pain flared sharp, but it grounded him. Better him than her. Always. The starving man still crouched in the corner, eyes averted, clutching the empty tin Emma had given him. He muttered something Noah couldn't hear. Prayer or madness, maybe both. Overhead, the roof groaned. A long crack split through the ceiling beam, and snow sifted down in steady flakes. Shadow's ears perked instantly, nose twitching at the shifting air. Noah cursed under his breath. He strode across the room, scanning the rafters. "The roof's not going to last." Emma blinked sleepily, rubbing her eyes. "Will it fall?" "Not if I move you first," Noah said firmly. He crouched, helping her to her feet. Her small hand slipped into his gloved one, fragile but trusting. Shadow barked once, sharp and urgent, then padded toward the back of the station, where a narrow hallway led to the old storage room. Noah followed his lead, guiding Emma with quick steps. The starving man stumbled after them, clutching the tin as if it were his ticket to survival. The storage room was cramped, lined with burlap sacks and rusted crates, but it was solid. Noah slammed the door shut just as a thunderous crack ripped through the main hall. The sound of collapsing timber and shattering glass followed, the storm devouring the space they had just abandoned. Emma gasped, clinging to her doll. "It's gone." Noah knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders gently. "Not you, that's what matters." She nodded faintly, but her eyes brimmed with tears. "I didn't even say good night to Mama." His throat tightened. He had no words to answer that kind of loss. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out the brass locket. He opened it, revealing the faded photo of his wife and son. "This is my family," he said softly. "I never got to say goodbye either. But sometimes I think they still hear me, wherever they are." Emma studied the photograph, her small brow furrowed. Then she whispered, "Maybe Mama and your family eat dinner together in heaven. Maybe they're not hungry anymore." The words, innocent and pure, slipped into Noah's heart like light through a crack. His vision blurred, tears he hadn't allowed in years welling up. Shadow pressed his head under Noah's arm, grounding him. Emma placed her tin, now empty, in the corner of the room, hands folded as if setting a table again. She bowed her head. "Thank you for sharing, Mama. I'll bring more tomorrow." The storm raged outside, but in that tiny storage room a fragile peace took root. The starving man lowered his head, whispering amen under his breath. Noah sat back, exhausted, but something in him had shifted. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was faith, stitched into scraps, miracles hidden in a child's whispers. And for the first time in years, Noah Ramirez let himself believe there might be a tomorrow worth protecting. The storage room was dark except for the pale beam of Noah Ramirez's flashlight, propped against a crate. Its cone of light swept across burlap sacks stiff with age, rusted tools, and dust heavy enough to choke. Snow still roared outside, battering the boarded walls, but here they were sealed in a fragile cocoon of wood and shadow. Emma Hayes sat cross-legged on a folded tarp, her doll nestled in her lap. Her sweater was still damp, strands of messy brown hair plastered to her face. Shadow rested beside her, chin on his paws, though his ears twitched at every groan of the storm. The starving man crouched in the corner, muttering softly to himself, the empty tin clutched against his chest like a holy relic. Noah sat on the cold floor opposite Emma, his back against the wall. His arm throbbed where the bat had struck, but it wasn't pain that kept him awake. It was her whisper about dinner for her mother in heaven that looped in his mind like a song he couldn't silence. He unfastened his coat, pulling out the brass locket. The faded photograph inside caught the weak light. His wife, smiling, his little boy, gap-toothed, laughing. Ghosts, promises he'd failed. Emma noticed. She tilted her head, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "That's them, isn't it? Your family?" Noah nodded stiffly. He wasn't used to sharing. He wasn't used to speaking at all. But something about her gaze, soft, unjudging, broke his silence. "My wife and my son," he said quietly. "I told them I'd come home. I told them we'd have more time. But I didn't. Deployment kept me away, and when I came back," his voice cracked, "they were gone." Emma hugged her doll tighter. "You didn't get to say goodbye." "No." His eyes burned. He pressed his thumb against the photo. "I failed them. A soldier who can protect strangers, but not his own family." He let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "That's who I am." For a moment, silence. The storm hammered above like a drum. Then Emma whispered, "But you're protecting me." The words stopped him cold. He looked at her, fragile and fierce in her ragged sweater, holding her doll like it was life itself. Her eyes glistened but steady, as if she saw something in him he could not. You gave Mama's dinner away, she went on softly. You saved that man. She nodded toward the corner where the starving man now dozed, the tin still in his arms. And you kept the bad men away. That sounds like keeping promises. Noah's throat closed. His hands shook around the locket. Emma! He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that broken men didn't deserve second chances. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he felt Shadow press against his leg, warm and steady, as if even the dog refused to let him drown in guilt. Emma leaned closer, whispering as though to the walls themselves. Maybe God sent you. Maybe he knew I couldn't be alone. The storm wailed through the cracks, but in that cramped room, her words carried louder than thunder. Noah dropped his face into his hands, the locket biting into his skin. For the first time in years, he didn't fight the tears. They came hot, unstoppable. He felt Shadow's weight lean into him, felt Emma's small hand touch his sleeve. He had confessed his failure. And instead of judgment, a child had given him mercy. But peace lasted only a moment, because then Shadow's head snapped up, ears rigid, a growl rolling low in his throat. His body pressed against Emma, shielding her instantly. Noah lifted his head, listening. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching outside the storage room door. The handle rattled once, then a voice, rough and mocking, slipped through the wood. We know you're in there. Supplies. Girl, dog, hand them over or we take them. Emma's doll slipped from her grasp, thudding softly onto the tarp. Her breath hitched. Noah's hand went to the locket, clutching it like a weapon. His eyes hardened. He had confessed. He had been given mercy. Now he had to prove he was worthy of it. Stay behind me, he whispered to Emma. Shadow bared his teeth, the storm's howl drowned by the growl of loyalty. The night wasn't finished with them yet. The storage room door shook under the weight of fists. Dust drifted from the rafters with each blow. Emma Hayes pressed herself against the wall, doll hugged tight, her red sweater trembling with her small frame. Shadow stood before her, body taut, a growl vibrating like thunder. Noah Ramirez rose to his feet, locket clutched in one hand, the other wrapped around a splintered bat taken from the last fight. His chest burned with exhaustion, but his eyes had the hard steel of a man who had decided this time he would not fail. The voice outside snarled again. Open up, soldier! Hand over the girl and the dog, and we might let you live. Noah's lip curled. He stepped closer to the door, speaking low but fierce. You'll have to kill me first. The intruders laughed, boots crunching closer. Then the door splintered inward, wood cracking under a shoulder. Snow burst into the cramped room as 3 men stormed in, faces hidden by scarves, weapons raised. Shadow lunged before they could take another step. His body slammed into the first attacker, teeth sinking into the man's forearm. The intruder screamed, weapon clattering to the ground. Noah moved fast, driving the bat into the second man's ribs. The blow echoed like a drum, sending him staggering against the wall. The third raised a knife, rushing at Noah with a howl. Emma cried out, "No!" The sound fueled Noah's strength. He twisted, catching the knife wielder's wrist, forcing it upward until the blade clanged to the floor. With a roar, he shoved the man back into the shadows. The room exploded with chaos, snarls, screams, the crash of crates toppling. Snow whipped through the broken door, the storm itself seeming to join the fight. Then silence. The attackers lay, groaning on the floor, disarmed and defeated. Shadow stood over one, teeth bared but not breaking skin, chest heaving with fury. Noah, bat still in hand, braced himself against the wall, sweat and frost streaking his face. Emma crawled forward, clutching her doll. Her eyes were wide, wet with tears, but fixed on Noah. You didn't let them take me. Noah dropped the bat, sinking to his knees. His chest rose and fell like a collapsing mountain. He opened the locket in his trembling hand, staring at the faces inside. His wife, his boy, the family he lost. Then he looked at Emma, fragile, brave, holding her doll as if it were life itself. and Shadow, loyal as breath, pressing close to them both. His voice cracked, breaking free from the weight of years. I failed before, but I won't fail you, not ever again. Emma crawled into his arms, hugging him tightly. Then you're my family now. The words shattered what was left of Noah's defenses. Tears streamed down his face, hot against the winter air. Shadow pressed against them both, his head resting on Noah's shoulder, sealing the vow. The storm outside began to break. Through the shattered doorway, a pale strip of dawn spread across the horizon, painting the snow in silver. Emma lifted her doll and whispered toward the light, her voice trembling but sure. "Mama, I brought you dinner, but I think God sent me new family to eat with too." Noah closed his eyes, clutching her tighter, the locket warm against his chest. For the first time in years he felt the weight of despair lift, replaced by something fragile but real. Not just survival, salvation. As the sun rose, three figures sat together in the ruin of the night: a soldier who found his second chance, a child who refused to stop believing, and a dog whose loyalty never wavered. A family forged in storm and faith,